On the evening of November 18th, Whig forces numbering over 500 under Andrew Williamson learned of a much larger force of King's friends nearby. Williamson wrote in his report that they had then moved to the, quote, cleared ground of Colonel Savage's plantation, where they could use our artillery with advantage and then fortify our camp till we should receive more than certain information of their strength, unquote.
Arriving at their destination on November 19th, the Whigs built fortifications by using fence, rails, straw, and cowhides to create a stockade out of 4 outbuildings. Though not particularly impressive, the fortifications provided adequate cover for the powerful swivel guns the Whigs possessed.
The King's friends arrived later that morning and took positions in the town of 96, fortifying the brick jailhouse, which was impervious to gunfire. They then demanded that the Whigs surrender their weapons and disperse.
The Whigs refused, at which point the King's friends seized 2 of their number who were outside the fortifications. Williamson responded by ordering his men to fire. This led to fighting between the 2 forces that would continue on and off until Tuesday, November 21st. However, this sniping caused relatively few casualties.
The King's friends did try some clever tactics to drive the Whigs out of their fortifications. A letter by a Whig wrote the following: On the second day after the engagement began, they, Robinson's men, set fire to the fences and old grass in the fields all around us, with an intent to burn up our fort, which consisted only of dry fence rails, and attack us from behind the smoke. But the ground was too wet, and saved us the trouble of extinguishing the fire, which we intended to do at any risk. When they found the plan defeated, they set to work, and made some kind of a rolling battery, behind which they intended to come up and set fire to Colonel Savage's barn, and to burn us up. But this they afterwards dropped, and set fire to their engine themselves.
On the evening of Tuesday, November 21st, just as the Whigs were running low on food, water, and gunpowder, and planning to make their own desperate attack, the King's friends requested a meeting on Wednesday morning. There, both sides agreed to a cessation of hostilities while waiting for instructions. The treaty also stipulated that any Whig reinforcements were also bound by the agreement.
This scenario is making use of the Live Free or Die rules created by Little Wars TV, with some modifications. The board, based on old maps, archaeological investigations, and on-site observations at 96, includes several important terrain features, including the 96 District Brick Jail, the river, and the Whig fortifications. Historical sources state that the Whigs used rails, straw, and cowhides to connect the outbuildings at Savage's farm, but for the sake of simplicity, only the fence rails are included. Because of those fortifications, Loyalists will need to roll a 6 when firing on the Whigs rather than a 5 or 6 in order to inflict a DMZ. Once a unit suffers 5 DMZs, it loses a base and must roll a morale check. Both Loyalists and Whigs are considered 4th-ranked troops armed with rifles. This means that while they have a longer range than troops armed with muskets, they are unable to volley fire, meaning they roll only 1 dice per base rather than 2. Swivel guns will each roll 2d6. The Whigs chose their location wisely, as there was essentially no cover for the Loyalists as they advanced, while the Whigs had an excellent field of fire.
I left my commander behind.
Very brave behind the troops there.
He's like way down here. He's like, I'm gonna stay out of firing range.
Probably a good idea. Looking at things from the Whig perspective, it looks pretty good.
Not looking great.
I'm not ready.
Eventually, the Loyalists get close enough that they are able to launch a charge. In Live Free or Die, players order a charge and roll 2d6 and move that many inches forward. I mean, it is possible that a charge will fail to make contact. With a roll of 10, the charge is successful, but the Whigs are allowed closing fire before the results of the charge are calculated, leading to casualties among the advancing Loyalists. The Whigs are in good order and behind fortifications, and therefore roll 5 dice, while the charging Loyalists only roll 2. Whoever has the most 5s and 6s wins. Oh no.
Wow, I guess you're rolling out.
Oh, none. Okay. The results of the charge are devastating to the Loyalists. They will lose a total of 2 bases, which constitutes 1/3 of the attacking force. In addition, the adjacent Loyalist unit will also take DMZs, since they had a close-up view of how badly the attack went. It should be noted here that DMZ chips represent demoralization, disorganization, and desertion, not simply the results of enemy fire. Units witnessing another unit retreat would naturally become demoralized, even if they had not been under direct enemy fire. Oh, also, the retreat inflicts 3 DMZs on those guys.
Goodness gracious, we just got rid of
Well, no, not them. On the other unit, because they're freaked out because they just saw the chaos of what happened. They just saw the terrible things that happened. Unable to take the fortifications by storm, the Loyalists begin to fire. However, the odds are against them as they need 6s to hit the Whigs, who are in fortifications, while the Whigs only need a 5 or 6 to hit the Loyalists. Eventually, the Loyalists are forced to make a morale check. Need at least a 5 or 6 on one of those dice? No 5s or 6s. No 5 or 6s.
Bye.
Oh, right.
They retreat 6 more inches, so that's going to be a problem.
Yay.
And don't forget to remind me, we also have to roll to see what happens to your commander.
No. I want you to remember that.
While the Loyalist commander would survive, Whig fire would eventually force the Loyalists to retreat.
1 hit.
No.
And I'm going to roll for my first swivel gun to these guys over here.
We ain't have an officer.
And that's 2 hits.
Oh,
Ooh.
that is not good.
Yeah, because those guys don't have an officer connected.
And then I'm going to roll for this swivel gun over here. And that's no hits.
Okay. All right, so you had initiative, so you would go first. Go ahead and remove your 5 DMZ and a base.
150 soldiers live.
And you remove a base doesn't mean they're all dead. It means a lot of them ran away.
And then
They're not all necessarily dead.
That's a 3.
So you
back.
Yep.
Mine with Jesse's, right?
And then I take
Sounds
mine
right.
up and take a base away too.
Exactly.
correct?
And so that means you also need to make a morale check. And you roll 4 dice. You could decide to retreat and give up, or you can keep fighting if you want.
Don't be a coward.
The Loyalists, realizing they cannot win, decide to retreat. As expected, a frontal assault launched by militia unprepared for close combat against an enemy firing behind fortifications, armed with rifles and swivel guns, did not end well. Live free or die rules are great, but are designed to be very flexible and for field battles, not for ones in which defending fortifications was important. Based on the actual terrain and distance of the battlefield, Whig forces should be able to fire more than once before they can be charged. Therefore, for the next 2 scenarios, the melee table was revised to include outcomes for fortified units, and the range of rifles and swivel guns was extended from 10 inches to 21 inches. This means an assault in the first scenario would have been even more disastrous for the Loyalists.
Why don't we have some British regulars help the Loyalists?
Crown forces will advance from the jailhouse, across the river, and towards the Whig encampment. I'm not sure if that formation was used much during the American Revolution, but for our purposes, it works. Loyalist riflemen will halt and fire into the fortifications, causing 2 DMZs of damage. However, Whig forces from within the fortifications will return fire, doing significant amount of damage to the British regulars. Realizing that the defenders will be at the advantage, the Crown forces decide to continue their advance. Realizing her difficult situation, the Whig commander decides to sortie out of the fort in order to maximize the amount of fire she can bring to bear against the advancing Crown forces. Rather than immediately charge and try and take the fortifications by storm, the Loyalist riflemen and the British regulars will fire into the fortifications with great effect. In contrast, Whig returning fire will do very little damage. And then, let's see, can you put some smoke, Cassie, please, in front of your guys? We'll make it look epic.
Provide us some smoke.
A little bit more smoke, right?
Just
There's
a
3
cotton
bases
ball.
there.
Dropping a cotton ball on it.
You see me. Look at all the
Bury
smoke
them,
in the picture
please.
back there, right? Like it's
That's a lot of smoke.
It's a lot of smoke. It's a lot of smoke. Okay.
An avalanche.
So,
Honest.
all right. So give me a hard time. Whig and Crown forces will continue to trade fire until both suffer enough casualties to cause a morale check. While the British regulars will succeed in their morale check, Whig forces will fail, causing the ones inside the fort to flee from it. However, the Whig commander sees the problem in the fort and moves his sortie force back inside of it in an attempt to hold it against the British onslaught. Having softened up their enemy, the British regulars will charge. In Live Free or Die, a chart is consulted based on the characteristics of the different units in order to figure out how many dice they roll. Whoever has the most successes wins the resulting melee. The British regulars will roll 12 dice, while the Whig defenders only get to roll 1, showing the importance of discipline and morale in a charge. So roll a dice, and we'll see. Basically, if you roll anything over a 1, all your guys bug out. Okay, you rolled a 6. So all of your troops, at the sight of British steel, flee and decide they're going to go.
Those red coats are legit.
Goodbye. I
See?
tried.
You tried? No, it was.
I tried so hard.
That's why regulars are so good. The deck was stacked against you.
Now
So-
let's give them cannons.
I thought
Right.
I was being so
So-
smart moving, and it kind of worked out because like they got to come back, but it really only bought me a turn.
Right. Any other thoughts, Whig Commander?
No, that was bad.
Right. No. If the deck was stacked against you, how about our noble British and loyalists? What do you think? We'll give what British Commander? What do you think?
I don't know. You died.
Speechless.
Loyalist Commander, what do you think now that you got some British reinforcements?
It's pretty nice. I wish we always had British reinforcements.
Right. No, that does certainly make a difference.
What if we gave the King's Friends regulars and cannons?
The cannon would prove a dangerous addition to Crown forces, as they are able to fire all the way from the jailhouse to the Whig fortifications. However, Whig units within the fortifications are only able to hit enemy units that have crossed the river. This means that the Crown forces could simply bombard their enemy into submission without any taking casualties themselves. You have to lose a base.
One success, one failure again. I'm
And that provokes a
switching out.
morale check.
And that is 1.
You roll 1, you need at least a 5, or your troops retreat.
Right. You've got. I will die. I can't do.
Okay, the troops hold fast. Commander Jackson managed to keep them in line.
We're not scared of a cannon.
All right, no, definitely not.
Not even two of
Definitely
them.
not. So they got to fire, so now it's time for movement. So going back, Commander Jackson.
May I have a ruler? Thank
The only ruler here is King George.
you.
The Whig commander does realize that if he just sits inside his fort, he will eventually be destroyed. He therefore is going to attempt to launch a sortie.
Well, I'm scared.
Terrifying.
I mean,
Scary.
but even though this is about the only thing he can do, it will prove ineffective, as the British regulars will continuously launch charges and the artillery will continue to fire, eventually forcing the Whigs to retreat from the fort and lose the battle. All right, so to our British Crown victors, what is your response to all this?
Those guns were nice. The cannons. Nice.
Artillery is great. What do you have to say, British Commander?
You died.
Same
Yeah.
comment, different
Same
name.
comment, yeah. Speechless at how amazingly my charges work.
What do you have to say, Whigs?
I think it was pretty close. I think we fought hard. So I'm proud of us.
We have a
And-
whole unit.
You may have won the battle, but we'll see who wins the war.